Okay, so we could move on to the next session. We've set in context the wider arena, so we're now going to move on to continuity of carer, and we have a session from colleagues in Forth Valley. We have Alison, Jennifer and Cara who are going to lead this session, and we also are fortunate in having a mum, Jeanette. Where's Jeanette? Jeanette. Welcome, Jeanette. And I'm not sure what your baby's called. Pardon? Parker. Right, so we're very fortunate to have you today, and thank you for coming in and helping us. So I'll hand over to the team from Forth Valley, who I'm sure will involve Jeanette. Yes? Thank you.
We'll be nice and quick because I think Parker's more important than what we are saying. This is very far away from what Alison and I normally do in our day-to-day job, so please bear with us. My name's Jennifer Benny and I am one of the team leaders of the Willow team. We were one of the first pilot teams to be implemented in Forth Valley, and Alison has two of the further teams, of the most recent teams that have then since went and been implemented within Forth Valley. So we're just doing a wee brief summary of how we, technology, see. So as we've already heard this morning, 2 years ago the Scottish Government published a new way of how we will present our maternity and our neonatal care within Scotland. Forth Valley were very eager, we put ourselves forward and we became one of the 5 early adopter boards, and we have put ourselves guns blazing and went straight in forward for this. It was decided that we wanted to provide continuity of care to our patients, and that woman will be cared for by a primary midwife who will provide antenatal and postnatal care, and then no more than one other midwife from that same team. I'll forget to move this forward, sorry, bear with me. With that, we decided in Forth Valley to adopt a buddy system. So the patient will have one primary midwife, and they will also be introduced to a buddy midwife who will also take their care forward. The Best Start decided that the interpartum care will be provided by the primary midwife or a member of their team who the woman had met throughout their pregnancy. The way we decided to take that forward within Forth Valley and our individual teams was to provide team information nights, so the patients could come along and meet their midwives, so they have got to recognise the faces, got to know the patient, the midwives, and also group parent craft sessions. And also within my own team, we go along and work alongside our high risk antenatal clinics as well, and meet our patients throughout when they're seeing their consultant clinics. Probably way behind with that part. The Willow team was introduced at Forth Valley in June 2018, and we are a team of 4 midwives. We work alongside our existing pre-birth planning service that we had up and running in Forth Valley, and we care primarily for our patients that have additional needs that can range from child protection concerns, substance misuse, and mental health problems. We're gaining great feedback from our other services also, because they have that continuity of care. They have one midwife they can chat to. We attend case conferences. Our patients get to know us really well, and we get to know them very well. They get a right trust in in us, and again, they don't have to repeat maybe a worrying or an upsetting story or past history each time that they meet someone new. We work on an on-call system within our team. We've adapted it in several different ways since we first established, because as we're going to hear, there's been many challenges and we don't know these challenges until we work them. And then we've looked at each challenge individually and then looked at a way to meet the needs of both the women and of the midwives as well. Alison's going to take you along our next little journey on our road.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. So following on from the pilot team commencing, staff were asked to volunteer for the next pilot team. This was to be formed from an existing team, which was then divided into 2, and one half became the Maple team. It consisted of 8 midwives working on a range of hours who actually created their own rota, comprising of an on-call model for day cover of labour ward, a set 10.5-hour night shift in labour ward, and also hours set aside to caseload. Every midwife, as Jennifer says, has a caseload of up to 35 women, and she also has a buddy midwife working within the team to cover her holidays or days off, etc. Their caseloads were initially generated with patients already booked under the maternity system, who obviously still required care, and then the new pre-bookers who would provide the true data of the new model of care. A consultant was also identified to be attached to each team to work alongside providing multidisciplinary teamwork. The second half of the original team then piloted as the Juniper team, and again was staffed by midwives volunteering to be part of this pilot. They chose a 10.5-hour shift pattern as opposed to the on-call model. It did become apparent that the Maple staff working the on-call model were finding it much easier to allocate caseloading time than the Juniper staff who were trialling the 10.5-hour shift rota. This was due to them having an on-call commitment within labour ward as well as a caseloading expectation within the same shift. Juniper staff have trialled different small tests of change to this rota, including trying to incorporate a caseloading day once a week and also the caseloader picking up the on-call on this day. When the decision was made to pilot further teams, an established team was looked at who didn't require to be split to meet the required delivery numbers, and all staff within this team were keen to remain within it and be part of the pilot, with the exception of one retiring midwife who was replaced by another midwife. The Oak teams they became were consulted again on the model of care they wanted to work with, and they chose to adopt the on-call model. Our pilot teams have continued to be rolled out, with Chestnut commencing last month as well as Rowan. Chestnut mirrored Oak in that they were an existing team, but they did require slight staff changes to accommodate staff wishing to join or not be part of the pilot teams. The Rowan team are slightly different also, as they cover the most rural part of our area, which has created its own challenges, mainly due to the vast area that the team cover. However, 4 midwives were very keen to trial a team where 2 midwives work in community and their buddy midwife covers intrapartum care in labour ward. Due to the size of this team, full cover is not possible, although the midwives are providing feedback which may in turn lead to this model being implemented in a larger team. Forth Valley's aim is to have all teams out caseloading by June of this year, and the models of care already being piloted are constantly providing feedback to establish the best way for these teams to work for both patients and for staff. Community hubs have been secured for all pilot teams, and at present we are in the process of identifying further hubs for the remaining areas. To be at this stage, we have had to overcome many challenges, which from the very start were evident, as Jennifer is now going to discuss further.
Thanks, Alison. So as Alison was saying, and we've mentioned also, all changes required always present some challenges as we've been going along. So again, one of the main challenges was maintaining and getting a rota to suit each individual team, to suit the needs of both the patients and for the midwives to continue a work-life balance. We want to implement our teams of no more than 8 midwives in each team. So again, there's getting the happy medium of especially providing the right adequate skills and support within each team to all midwives. We've got lots of experienced midwives at Forth Valley, but they may not feel experienced in certain areas if they've been placed within a hospital setting. So it's making sure we've got those support mechanisms in place for them. We also have a high proportion of part-time workers, so again it was making sure we could accommodate their hours within each individual team. Again, another challenge was developing mechanisms to ensure that the women are able to meet all the case-loading midwives, so when they are cared for in their intrapartum period, they have said hello and know who that midwife is. We are already using electronic notes within Forth Valley, a Badgernet system, and this then gives the patients the opportunity to access all their maternity notes with themselves, their phone, iPads, computers at home. And we've also got a part in there that we can do for our postnatal birth and care questionnaire. We've had excellent feedback. This is one of our colleagues. I don't think she's here today, unfortunately, but she did get great feedback from one of her patients that she cared for throughout her pregnancy and in labour and afterwards. As I say, we're also getting great feedback from other services that we work with, from the consultants, from other simple services, social work, to say they are enjoying it, having that person, that named person that they can contact to discuss that patient with. Taking it forward with our case loading, it is challenging. We're not going to stand up here and lie to anybody. We are experienced midwives ourselves, Alison and I, and some days can be very daunting and challenging, but at Forth Valley, I think we are all holding our heads up high, and we're working really hard every day. And we know we're going to have to make changes as we're going along. We're trying very hard, and I think as our feedback's coming in, we get feedback from patients on a regular basis and from the staff that allows us to then adapt that to take it forward. I'm going to pass you over to the nice part now, to Baby Parker.
First of all, thank you very much for taking the time to come in here and really show why we're all here. We've heard lots there about the best start and about continuity of care, and what we'd really like to know is what's it meant for you? You've had 2 babies before?
3 babies. So yeah, this is my 3rd. So my first 2 babies, I had 2 really traumatic births with hemorrhages, and the thing that I found after all the kind of medical stuff really difficult was that the midwives that came to see me in the community were lovely, but I'd have to tell them the whole story and explain it all again. And I really struggled with talking about it and having to say it all again. And I think this time around, the thing that made a really big difference was I didn't have a massive hemorrhage, which was great. But also, instead of feeling like there was a team of midwives looking after me, I felt like I was part of the team with my midwives, and they came and they'd been through it with me and they understood everything afterwards. And that made a really, really big difference for me, and my husband and my children knew who they were. And that made a big difference as well for us. And beforehand, I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and having to take them to the doctor's surgery for the appointments was just a really, really difficult morning for me every time. And as I got more pregnant, it was harder and harder. And so when they rang and said, "Would you like the midwives to come to you?" I was just like, oh God, so much I would prefer that. And it made a really big difference.
So you had your care at home, and your appointments were different than last time?
Sort of a bit later on in the pregnancy, because I think Willow Team had just started, but that made a big difference for me as well, rather than trying to entertain my 2- and 4-year-old whilst having my blood taken, which was
So
good.
they were part of the appointment too?
Yes, yeah, it was good.
And you said that about it made a difference to your partner as well?
I think so he wasn't able to be at all the appointments, but he would know who was coming, and he felt like he was part of things as well, and that made a really big difference.
And when you say you felt like you were part of things, did you feel like you had it? What was it about the care that made you feel more that you were a part of things?
I think that I wasn't having to explain things, because it's really hard when you're a layperson trying to explain the medical things that have happened to you without getting really emotional about them, because they were horrible and unpleasant. And so having someone know what has happened and having been there and seen you go through it, so I think makes a really big difference. You're not trying to explain everything and justify why you're worried about things or the questions that you want to ask. And particularly with your sort of the baby, you sort of feel like you should know everything. So knowing your midwives makes you feel better about being able to ask questions and not know everything because you've forgotten it all, and that kind of stuff made a real difference for me.
And so if you have any friends that are pregnant, what would you say to them about Best Start?
Well, I would definitely say hope you're in the area where you get the midwife that comes to visit you afterwards, because that makes a really, really big difference. I guess the one thing I would say that I think I know it's part of the process, but when you switch from midwives to health visiting, there is a bit of a shock, because obviously health visitors have got presumably more patients or a different style, but it's even more jarring with this because you've had a midwife who knows everything about you and they've been through the birth with you and they're totally there, and then the health visitor comes in and is like, so what happened? How was your birth? And that's really, really difficult, and it was even more difficult this time, I think, because I'd been so close to my midwife,
So you
and
felt
that was
it was quite a contrast.
a big contrast. I think I don't know what handover they get, but sort of having to tell the whole story was just like, oh, I don't know. I sort of expected it to carry on forever, but it didn't. But yeah.
So thank you very, very much and thank you for coming along and sharing about your experience.
You're welcome. I hope it carries on.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's just say we're going to open it up to questions.
Okay, so we're just going to open it up to questions, and
you should have the link to Slido, which is where the questions are getting generated through.
We do have some questions on Slido, so I'll just start by asking the team from Forth Valley. A question for Cara. You're an obstetrician, and we didn't actually really hear much from you. So how have you made continuity work for obstetricians in Forth Valley?
Thank you. Having a karaoke flashback. Is it on? Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me better? Yeah. So how have we made continuity work for the obstetricians? So I suppose in Forth Valley we were lucky that we had a team-based system for midwifery care already. So women had the same team antenatally and postnatally, but not intrapartum. So for the obstetricians in Forth Valley, it hasn't changed hugely. We still have women coming up to the high-risk antenatal clinic who have been seen by their community team and are coming up for their high-risk appointment. So from that point of view, it hasn't changed things hugely for us. It's changed, the benefits have been that we have another option for women to birth in the alongside midwifery unit. We didn't have that option for them before, and that's been a really positive change for us. But as obstetricians, we haven't found it disruptive to the service we provide. Jennifer, who is in the Willow team, those patients require extra care, extra visits. Jennifer will come to the clinic, do the midwifery check for the patient, and then come into the room with us. And therefore, everything that we are discussing with the patient, Jennifer hears as well. And it's, again, for the patient, she doesn't have to go back and say, the obstetrician said this, I need this done. It's all done at one visit, and I think that's much better for the patient. In terms of workload for the obstetric team, again, we're not really feeling any difference. For me specifically, I had quite a large antenatal population. We work very geographically, and my geographical area has lots of housing estates that are springing up that have 4-bedroom houses that seem to be filling with children all the time. So my population was large. I had a very large antenatal clinic compared to some of my other colleagues who had smaller antenatal populations. And because we're caseloading and dividing that workload, it is becoming more equal spread amongst the consultant team. I think definitely continuity, I've found that some of the caseloading midwives who are taking on more autonomy, and instead of saying to a patient, right, this blood test, you need to go up and speak to the consultant clinic about it, what seems to happen is happening more and more is the midwife will contact me by finding me in the hospital or emailing me. I will then say, this is what I think you should do. She doesn't need an antenatal visit to the hospital. And that midwife is very much more empowered to go back and say to the patient, okay, I've had this advice and we'll keep you in the community. You're not having to come up and sit for 3 hours waiting to see Dr. Smith. So I think we've seen lots of advantages locally from the continuity of care. And I feel personally it hasn't changed my workload significantly at all.
Next question from Slido. How many on-calls do you do a week, and how is this impacted on your personal life? I'm guessing that's for Alison and Jennifer.
Well, you go for it.
So obviously it depends on how many hours pro rata you work as opposed to how many on-calls you do within the week. I would generally say that most people would do between 2, probably 2 on-calls a week. Some people, when we came into the team system, preferred to work a night shift as opposed to an on-call, and it was very much decided within that team, if that suited the rest of the team, that they would do a larger majority of nights and somebody else would do a higher volume of on-call shifts. I do actually caseload within the team, so I also do on-call days. And I was really anxious about this. I have a young family that I need to provide care for as well. I have to say that there are challenges to changing your workload and your shift pattern, but I have adapted quite quickly, and you do get very used to before when I was on call, I used to sit with my phone like this, looking at it, terrified that it was going to ring at any moment. And now I'm getting much more relaxed about being on call, and I am able to lead a normal life, as normal a life as a midwife leads, out with her working day.
And the last question, just for this session before we move on to the next one, is how do you provide continuity postnatally?
I think that's been a wee bit of a challenging point for our postnatal ladies, but again, our lower risk ladies, you know, it was decided on the days that you kind of offer your visits to them. But again, that's adaptable. You've already got to know that patient. She's been your case loading midwife. You know about her delivery. So again, you can work that round when she requires to be visited and when you feel she requires to be visited. It doesn't necessarily need to be at 10 o'clock in the morning. If it suits both yourself and her to have a visit later on in the day, then that's absolutely fine. Within my own team, our ladies are obviously got a wee bit more additional needs, so we do have to visit them on a more regular basis, and that's where your buddy system can come in also, where if you are on a day off or on an on-call shift, that's where your buddy can take that slot over and they can pop out to visit also. We're very lucky in Forth Valley. We have excellent maternity care assistants who work very closely with the teams, who had already been working with the existing teams, and they're a great support to us to provide that postnatal support also in the community. And again, we're starting to get great continuity with our health visitors. We can do more handover, joint health visiting visits, handover if there's been a traumatic event with that patient, you've already got to know that. You can liaise with your health visitor and speak to them personally to pass that over, so you're not causing any more trauma to the patient as they get their care handed over to the health visitor.
Thanks very much. That was really, really enlightening. Thank you for your questions, and thank you very much. I'd like to also say thank you to Jeanette, I don't know if she's still here, who's within the NHS Lothian system. So she's clearly working in Lothian. The system's clearly starting to work in Lothian as well. So it's very good and very positive. Thank you.